Hello everyone. We are here with the chapter We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. It is the second prose chapter from class 11th book Hornbill by Gordon Cook and Alan East. Now this chapter, this story is not an imaginary story. It is a real life experience. The narrator goes on to a journey around the world, a voyage, trying to replicate Captain James Cook's round the world voyage, and faces problem on way. Disaster happens. But the most important thing that we come to see in this chapter, in the story, is not the reaction of the adults, but how the children reacted. Children of 6, 7 years old, how they kept their cool in that situation of crisis. As well as this story also tells us that if we go on and if we don't lose hope and persist and be positive, things can be positive in the result. So let us begin with the story. A narrator says that it was somewhere in July 1976 that he, his wife Mary, son Jonathan, who was 6 years old, and daughter Susan, 7 years old, they started their voyage from Plymouth in England. Their aim was to duplicate round the world voyage made 200 years earlier by Captain James Cook. Now this was an intense desire of the narrator. He says, Mary and I, a 37-year-old businessman, had dreamt of sailing in the wake of means in the same manner, in the same way, of the famous explorer. And for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills in British waters. So it was not one day preparation, that one day they woke up and started on the journey. No, 16 years they had spent. And honing means uh, perfecting their seafaring skills, how they would be doing the things. So they tested themselves in various weathers, climate and all that. They had their boat prepared professionally, Wave Walker. It was a 23-meter, 30-ton wooden hull beauty. And not only it was made, but it was tested in the roughest of the weather. The first leg of their planned 3-year, 105,000 kilometer, that is 105,000 kilometer journey. They started from Plymouth, and the first leg means the first part of their journey, it was till the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. Now before leaving that place, heading towards east because they were going to Australia, they hired 2 crewmen. One was American Larry Wiesel and second was Swiss Herb Sigler. Now why they hired? Because now they were entering one of the world's roughest seas, the southern Indian Ocean. On our second day out of Cape Town, the day they moved out from Cape Town, on the second day, they started experiencing strong gale, sea wind. And it was continuous for next few weeks. Narrator says that the gales did not worry, the strong wind did not worry. But the thing of worry was the size of the waves. up to 15 meters. Just think of it, 15 meters, almost a three-story building. On December 25, they were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite atrocious, rough weather, they had a wonderful holiday complete with Christmas tree. New Year Day also saw no improvement in the weather, but they were sure that the things were going to change. And he says, yes, it changed, but not for better, but for the worse. At dawn, that is early morning on January 2, the waves were gigantic, huge waves. Now they were sailing with only a small storm jib. Storm jib is what you can say just like a sail, which is used in the boats, which is when the winds are very strong and to control the speed of the boat. And they were still making 8 knots. Now in the sea, the speed is calculated in knots and the distance is calculated in nautical miles. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us. It was a very, what you can say, a scene which could make anyone afraid of. To slow down the speed of the boat, they dropped the storm jib, lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. We double lashed everything. They double tied everything. And they went through the life drafts drill, attaching lifelines to each other, wearing the oilskins, that is waterproof jackets and all that, life jackets, and they waited for the worst to happen. The first indication of impending disaster came out about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence, a fearful silence. There was complete silence that time. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. And then came a growing roar. An enormous cloud towered aft of the ship. It seemed as if a big cloud was over the ship. But when narrator saw it, he realized with horror that it was not a cloud, but a wave like no other he had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. Now, especially the students of science, or most probably many of you must have read in the motion of waves, trough and crest. Crest is the breaking point of the wave. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment narrator thought that they might ride over the wave. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. His head smashed into the wheel, and he was aware of flying overboard. He was thrown off the ship, and he was sinking below the waves. He felt that his end has come, and he accepted it. He was losing consciousness, and he knew that everything was going to be over. Unexpectedly, his head came out of the water. He could see Wave Walker near capsizing. Capsizing is drowning. Mast was not vertical, but it was horizontal to the water level. And then suddenly, to their good luck, another wave hurled her upright. The lifeline which was attached to the narrator, it became tight, and he was just pulled back onto the main boom, the main part of the Wave Walker. And after that there were many waves, which he says that, just read these lines, subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. He was powerless. He was thrown here and there. He says, my left ribs cracked, my mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow he could find the wheel. He lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. Water, water everywhere. He could feel that ship had water below, but he was not in a position to abandon the wheel to investigate. Suddenly the front hatch opened and his wife Mary appeared, and she informed that we are sinking, the decks are smashed, it is full of water. He immediately instructed his wife to take the control over the wheel, and he went for the hatch. There, the two crewmen, they were pumping like madmen, but she saw the scene over there. It was very disturbing scene. Broken timbers hung at crazy angles. The whole starboard is the right hand side. Starboard of a plane or starboard of a ship is the right hand side. Starboard side bulged inwards. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys sloshed about in deep water. He half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. He asked them whether they were all right. They answered that okay, fine. Sue said that, pointing toward a big bump over her eye, says that her head hurts a bit. But then Nezra had no time to look at small injuries. He found some hammers, screws, and canvas and struggled back on the deck. As the starboard side was open, every wave was increasing the water level in the ship. He knew that if he couldn't make some repairs, they would surely sink. Somehow he managed to stretch canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes, the open holes. The water was still streaming down, but the speed was lessened. Now what happened was, but the problem did not end up over here. What happened was, the pumps that they were using were choked, and the electric pump short-circuited, and they could not use it. Back on the deck, he found that two of her spare hand pumps had been taken away, wrenched away. And they had also lost forestay sail, the jib, the dinghies, and the main anchor. Then he remembered that he had another electric pump under the chart room floor. He connected it to an outpipe, and thankfully for them, it worked. The night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering and working the radio. They were sending signals. They were in turns pumping water, looking for things, looking for help. They send maydays. Now these maydays are something like SOS, save our soul signals. But there was no response. And he was not surprised because they were in a very remote part of the world. Now Sue's head had swollen alarmingly. She had two enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. When I asked why she hadn't made more of her injuries before this, why she didn't tell about the injuries that she had. Now look at the reply of this girl, and remember, she is just 7 years old. I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. She very well knew that if she would tell about the injuries, her father would be worried, and he will not be able to concentrate completely on the efforts of saving. Now look at the courage of this girl. She could understand. And she's not a grown-up girl. She's just 7 years old. And she says, I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. So this is the first part of the chapter. Here we see a narrator taking up the journey and then the disaster happening. And first glimpse of the courage, how the children reacted to the situation.